Can we start? Father Paul, is that you?
Yeah.
Hallelujah. Thank you for being here. Okay. Very good. It is our custom that at these events we have a little speech which we give traditionally, and so I would like to start out with that speech. I keep it as short as possible, but I think it's good to remember the meaning of an event, so that's what we want to do. So through the years, I read it because first of all I would remember it, but secondly I want to send it around so to our friends here in Europe and Russia and so on. Okay, through the years I had always heard people talk about the old age as the golden age. I never believed what I heard. I just thought it was somewhat of a myth, or worse, a fairy tale, which people told each other in order to console each other, and themselves unconcerned if it was true or not. There was, of course, nothing wrong with consolation, but the question was if the consolation was really true or not. Then, as I myself reached high age, the 90s, I was amazed. The situation was really much better than I had thought. The reason was Karen and Ken and our friends who cooperated with them in maintaining and reconstructing the House of Peace. First of all, there was our lawyer friends, our great lawyer, David McMorrow, he is right here, and his dear wife, who defended us with great legal skills on the local, national, and international level. There had been already David's father, who taught Thomas of Aquinas to students at Nazareth College for over 40 years, and who had been the champion of social justice in Kalamazoo whenever there was any injustice. Then there was our great architect, Bill Koza. Bill is here too. If I find this, okay. Bill is with us too, and his dear wife too. And he rebuilt the House of Peace for many years. Then there was Karen, who, together with Ken and our friends Rebecca, Tony, Candice, Terry, and Jenny, and others, some of them my former best students, like Ken herself, and under her ingenious leadership, and together with our great architect Bill, reconstructed the House of Peace. First, the old center, which you can see up there, once built in the 1950s by a Dutch immigrant carpenter and later mayor of Portage. And then the south wing, and then the north wing, and finally the east hallway, which connected the two wings. It was a real Trinitarian structure, a reflection of the structure of the Word of God and the Word of nature and the Word of man, as already the great thinkers Bonaventura had seen them, and Thomas Aquinas and Albertus Magnus and Meister Eckhart. Karen was our most consistent and loving leader for over 40 years. Karen and our friends filled the House of Peace with love and Samaritan work. They made in it possible my golden age, which I had always considered to be impossible. That was what the Good Samaritans were able to do, following the first man of Samaria, who broke through the in-group, out-group barriers in Samaria and Galilee, where today rages the horrible war. For that Samaritan work, I am really grateful today to Karen and to all our friends and to my sons and daughters who continually added beautiful new tools and warm clothing and beautiful flowers and works of art to the House of Peace. And there was particularly Agnes, who received my daily health reports and kept me healthy up to this my 97th birthday. It needs a village to raise young people and to keep old people alive. I thank the whole village, Karen, family, and friends for making my golden age possible in the House of Peace. This 97th birthday is unique and extraordinary, not only because of the big number, close to 100, but even more so because of its closeness to the historical event of the presidential election in a few weeks in November 2024. In this election, we all will decide if our country, our republic, will remain the great inclusive democratic experiment which it has been for over 200 years, or if it will turn into an exclusive authoritarian form. I grew up in Germany when it was an exclusive authoritarian state. Early on, I learned what an authoritarian state was, containing authoritarian families and authoritarian civil society and an authoritarian religion. I learned authoritarianism most intensely for 12 years. After the end of this authoritarian experience, I worked for the rest of my life in theory and practice against the return of exclusive authoritarianism, of fascism, first in Europe, and then in America, and then in Russia. On October 1st, 1927, I had been born in the St. Elizabeth Hospital in Frankfurt into the inclusive democratic Weimar Republic, which had replaced an authoritarian monarchy in which my parents and grandparents had grown up. A few months before my birth, the authoritarian Charles Lindbergh flew alone the over 3,000 miles from New York to Paris. I celebrated my 6th birthday in Adolf Hitler's authoritarian Third Reich. My family had voted against the Hitler Party and for the Catholic Center Party. I celebrated my 16th birthday in 1943 in the authoritarian German Air Force. I defended the airspace of the Rhine Main area against British and American saturation bombing invented by the British General Harris against the Geneva Convention. I celebrated my 17th birthday in the authoritarian German army in an anti-tank division in Büdingen, Hessen, Germany. I was trained in an officers' company to fight communism at the Eastern Front. The life expectancy of a young German lieutenant on the Russian front was 4 weeks. On January 1945, I was ordered to give a speech on Adolf Hitler to the battalion in Büdingen. When I gave the speech about the life of the most extreme authoritarian leader, he lived only a few miles away in a small castle in the Taunus Mountains. From there, he directed the Ardennes offensive, which cost the lives of 150,000 American soldiers encircled by SS tank divisions. I would like to mention something here. We have a very famous person among us, and that is Tony. Tony's father and mother were brought together by Padre Pio. Padre Pio was canonized by the Pope John Paul II. He is a saint, and so the mother went to confession and she talked with Father Pio and talked about her fiance and about America. And Padre Pio says, that is a good country, that is where you should go. And so they went. So that was a wonderful origin. Then another event with Tony. Tony's father was in the same American division under General Patton, which I encountered in the Battle of Aschaffenburg. But it was a few weeks earlier, and a few weeks earlier, Tony's father was wounded in his leg, and he had to suffer from this for his whole life. But this wound, which was caused by a hand grenade which a German soldier had thrown at him, prevented him from crossing the Rhine River and joining the Battle of Aschaffenburg, in which the double casualties in the American army than in the German army, but the casualties were enormous. And so sometimes bad things which happen to us may have good consequences, paradoxically as that may sound. That is our Tony, and that is our background. And I think we should remember good people of the past and good things which happened to them, and even bad things which brought about good things. I celebrated my 18th birthday in the prisoner of war camp Allen in Norfolk, Virginia. When I entered the camp in May 1945, I was received by the very exclusive authoritarian German Colonel von Stauffenberg, the cousin of the inclusive democratic Stauffenberg, who tried to assassinate Hitler in 1944. The authoritarian Stauffenberg asked me why we had not fought better. I asked him where he had been. The whole camp was full of authoritarian members of the former Afrika Korps. In my first night in the camp, prisoners sentenced a comrade to death in the name of the Führer, who had already committed suicide because he had talked with the Jewish Secret Service man outside the camp. The American military police never found out who did the killing. Here in Camp Allen, I was categorized as anti-Nazi and not as Nazi and not as war criminal by Jewish American Secret Service men because I had been a leader in the Catholic youth movement in Frankfurt in the 1930s and 1940s. I was educated and trained to return to Germany and to participate in its denazification and redemocratization by professors in economics, political science, and sociology from the surrounding universities. It was during this re-education process that I heard the first time the word authoritarianism, and I learned about its historical meaning. It had been developed by the critical theorist of society of the International Institute of Social Research at Columbia University in New York, particularly by Erich Fromm, Max Horkheimer, Theodor Adorno. Later on, the institute was called the Frankfurt School, which today is continually attacked by Fox News and the Eternal Word and made responsible for whatever may be wrong with the Republic. At the time in Camp Allen, I did not yet know where the notion of the exclusive authoritarianism had come from. I celebrate my 90th birthday back home in Germany again. I lived with my mother and my brother Karl in our home in the housing complex for veterans from World War I and II called Friede, Peace. While I completed my studies in the Lessing Gymnasium and made my Abitur in preparation of my studies at the University of Frankfurt, Mainz, Münster, and Washington, D.C., I practiced what I had learned about authoritarianism at Camp Allen through the Christian Democratic Union CDU of Hessen. Here I met Walter Dirks, my friends, and Eugen Kogon, who had both been imprisoned by the authoritarian fascist government, and learned from their new critical Catholic journal, the Frankfurt Hefte, which I have received every month since 1946 up to the present, and you can see them all standing up there from 1946 on. Through Dirks and Kogon, I came into conscious contact with the Frankfurt School, which Max Horkheimer and Theodor Adorno at the Johann Wolfgang von Goethe University in Frankfurt. The Frankfurt School, particularly Erich Fromm and Max Horkheimer and Herbert Marcuse, and later on Theodor Adorno, had started the study of the exclusive authoritarian character and the inclusive democratic character in family, civil society, and religion in the 1920s and 1930s. The new CDU was supposed to be different from the former Old Catholic Center Party, which had given Adolf Hitler the emergency laws and thereby had made him into an authoritarian dictator with permission of the Vatican. The new CDU was to be open not only for the Christian bourgeois, Catholic and Protestant, but also for the workers. But then came the authoritarian Catholic Chancellor Konrad Adenauer and formed the present CDU for the Catholic and Protestant bourgeoisie and pushed out the workers, which then joined the Socialist and Communist parties. The Communist Party was soon outlawed forever by Adenauer and his CDU. At this time, while I did my denazification work and redemocratization work in Frankfurt and Hessen and the western part of Germany, I also wrote denazification letters for my former teachers at the Lessing Gymnasium, who had been Nazi party members because they needed a job, but without conviction and without any particular crimes. I celebrated my birthday of 1953 on the Andrea Doria in the harbor of Halifax, Canada, on my way to a leadership course at the Catholic University of America in Washington, D.C. Whatever I had learned about exclusive authoritarianism and how to overcome it, I relearned once more on a higher level. Here at Catholic University, I met my later wife, Margie. We married 3 years later, assisted by Bishop Josef Maria Reuss von Mainz. Then Margie and I together worked in school and church in Germany for denazification and redemocratization. In the early 1960s, Adorno predicted that a new wave of exclusive authoritarianism was rising not only in Europe, but also in America. A few people believed him, but following Adorno's prediction, Margie and I decided to return to America. If exclusive authoritarianism could do so much harm in and from small Germany, how much more misery could it do in and from the large United States, if it would happen here? We decided to oppose exclusive authoritarianism in American schools and churches. We promoted exclusive democracy from 1962 on, first in Baltimore and then in Kalamazoo. We founded the very democratic labor union at Western Michigan University. We founded the very democratic Center of Humanistic Future Studies at Western Michigan University. It developed well, but it was repressed by the administration. Authoritarian tendencies awakened even in the universities. We replaced the cancelled Democratic Center of Future Studies by a Democratic Center of Peace Research. After this was cancelled administratively as well, we replaced it by a Democratic Center for Environmental Studies. The latter has survived authoritarian pressure up to the present, 2024. We founded the inclusive Democratic International Course of the Future of Religion in Communist Yugoslavia. It is still alive today, long after communism has disappeared. We founded the likewise inclusive Democratic International Course on Religion and Civil Society in the Ukraine. It was blooming for almost 20 years. Russians, Ukrainians, Americans, Germans, and so on came together in this course and celebrated democratically their common fundamental values. Then the area was sanctioned by the Obama government. I was no longer allowed to preside over the course or lecture in it or sign documents for it, but the course continued nevertheless under the leadership of my former Russian student. I myself and the Western Michigan University would have had to pay high penalties if we had broken the sanctions. Now we have arrived at my 97th birthday. In recent years, the contradiction between the inclusive democratic and the exclusive authoritarian personalities and movements which characterized our republic from the beginning became more and more extreme in the Americas and in our American Republic, in which the great inclusive democratic experiment had taken place for 200 years and had fascinated the best people in the rest of the world. Next month, this contradiction between inclusive democracy and exclusive authoritarianism will come to its climax. If the democratic forces will win, the great democratic experiment will have a chance to continue. If the authoritarians will gain power in the United States in November 24, they will rewrite the American and world history of the past 100 years in terms of the authoritarian Henry Ford, Charles Lindbergh, Father Charles Coughlin, and the Bund. They will say that it had been a great mistake of the Roosevelt administration to initiate the New Deal, but that it had been even a greater mistake to join the communist Joseph Stalin against the fascist Adolf Hitler. Communism against fascism. Hitler should have been joined against Stalin. The Holocaust would be denied as a fantastic lie. The history had to be corrected. Communism and fascism would no longer be continually identified. To the contrary, the radical contradiction between communism and National Socialism would be stressed. After all, they were deadly enemies, fighting each other to the end of the one of them. In Stalingrad and Kursk, where we are now again, communism annihilated the European authoritarianism and fascism of the 20th century. As the image of Napoleon Bonaparte before, so would Adolf Hitler's image be improved. Hitler's order to stop the tanks in Dunkirk and to rescue the British army laying helplessly on the beach to be transported home safely, and the flight of Hitler's deputy to fascist lords in England in order to negotiate peace with Churchill, and his mysterious death in Berlin-Spandau shortly before his release from prison by Gorbachev would be the first time be seen as serious peace attempts or their consequences. The deputy wanted to persuade Churchill, if he had ever been allowed to see him and had not landed in the tower, to remain at least neutral in the war against the Soviet Union, if not even joining it on the German and European side. If the Soviet Union would win the war, England would lose its monarchy, its nobility, and its bourgeoisie. If America would win the war, England would be its coolie forever. If Germany would win the war, England could remain the great sea power controlling all its colonies, and Germany and Europe would be the great land power colonizing the Slavic world while giving up its colonies in Africa, Asia, and Middle East. The exclusive authoritarians would not only change the history books in terms of Ford, Lindbergh, Father Coughlin, and Bund, but they would also continue to make this kind of history for a long time to come. Barbarossa would be replaced by Charlemagne. The process has already started in Aachen, the capital of Charlemagne. The newest critical edition of Hitler's My Struggle, the Bible of exclusive authoritarianism, is spreading around the world. It is sold out not only in the Middle East, but also in Europe and America. We plan to continue our counter-authoritarian, pro-democratic work beyond this 97th birthday, beyond the next presidential election, no matter who will win. We counsel against leaving the country. If the authoritarians win, if all the inclusive Democrats are leaving, then only the authoritarians will be left, and the great experience of inclusive democracy and humanity will be lost. We shall continue to work for the foundation of our new Center for Humanistic Peace Research at Western Michigan University, the purpose of which is to discover the causes of internal and external conflicts in order to resolve them in direction of alternative future 3, the reconciled society, and to prevent the society in order thus to avoid alternative future and in order to thus to avoid alternative future 1, the totally administered society, and particularly in order to avoid alternative future 2, a militaristic society which gets involved in one war after the other with the help of the military-industrial complex until one of them ignites a nuclear world war, as for instance the present war in the Ukraine. We have found donors. We are looking for more donors for whom a peaceful, humane existence of all people is more important than the enormous profits, which can admittedly be reaped from war production. We know wars prevent depressions and only produce inflations, which are easier to endure and handle. But in the long run, war as antidepressive measures will become self-destructive. Thus, we shall continue to aim at alternative future number 3, the reconciled society, rather than on 1 or 2. No matter if inclusive Democrats or exclusive authoritarians will win the election in November. we shall work as long as we are still allowed to, maybe to our next birthday. Now I would like to offer a toast to the family and to all our friends and to the best future we hope for. Do we all have something to drink? Okay. Well, I have something to drink too, I hope. Okay, so toast to our whole family and to all our friends, all the friends who have written in, the friends from Switzerland and Germany, and the friends from Russia and from India, and all who celebrate with us, that we may have the best future we are all hoping for.
Cheers.
Prost.
Cheers.
And who is evidence?
Now we are ready for our meal.
So